Hey, Daniel.
Hey Jason, how's it going, man? The face, just like, I'm not sure about this. Hi. It's like, Dad, who's this person on on your computer?
Hey guys.
All right, the auto recording's working. Hey, everybody. Let's get started. Let's do walkthrough 1 to 5s. We have Darby was read only. Dan.
I'm 3. I had a pretty good weekend. Usually my normal is 2.5. It's in the middle, so 3's slightly better than normal.
Awesome.
And yeah, I had a pretty good weekend. Did some mountain biking in an actual mountain, which was interesting. Did not fall down, have any naps, which was good. No unintended naps. And then I feel like we're getting some goals. I'm working on my OKRs for this coming quarter, and it's a little bit like trying to figure out what I need to do there, but otherwise it's good. But to you, Jason.
For me, yeah, everything's going well. Team's working well. I'm 4, enjoying the end of my vacation now, and yeah, I'm headed back home next week. Looking forward to it a bit. So yeah, everything's good. I can't see who's next.
Lorie.
That's me. I'm 3.5, went up a half point. Wrapping up a few big projects here at work, which is good. But I have to fight with my insurance company about replacing my roof from hail damage. They don't want to do it. And then COVID-19 still a thing here. So, Kenny.
Yeah, I'm a 4. We last week had to like go through the process of deciding what we're going to do with our kids for the fall. We made that decision, which is good. It's nice that we've like, I don't know, don't have that pressure.
Like put them in storage or something.
Exactly. What should we do with children?
Like cold storage.
Yeah, if that was an option, we would have done it already. Wouldn't that be cool if you could just like cryogenically freeze your kids through COVID?
Wouldn't it be
Just for a
cool?
while.
I see what you did there.
I didn't even mean to do that. I played soccer yesterday, which is really nice. It's just nice to like get outside and run around for a little bit. It's cooled off, and I'm excited about the GC tomorrow. And just generally, when we prepare for the GC, like we talk about things we recently shipped and things we're excited about, and so it just gives me an awesome sense of what's going on, and I'm really proud and excited about a lot of stuff going on in this section. Sam.
I'll go. I'd say I'm a 4 too. I had a pretty good weekend with the kids. It's hot here yesterday. So I don't know how hot it is in Texas now. It was over 100 in Portland.
Ooh.
Wow,
Is,
that's, yeah.
We get some hot weather occasionally.
Yeah,
Yeah, we haven't
we
gotten that
do.
much this year, but yeah, it was hot. So we spent yesterday, part of yesterday in our neighbor's pool, which might sound fancier than it is. It's like an above ground inflatable pool that is about 2.5 feet deep, maybe 7 feet wide. And so, yeah, it was me and the kids in there for a while.
I have to say, there's nothing like more potent in terms of amount of time it takes to get your kids tired than swimming. You like throw the kids
Yeah.
in a pool, they'll sleep like babies in the night.
We've got a trip planned in August for my wife and son's birthday where we're going to be staying at a house with a pool. So yeah, we'll be trying to take advantage of that.
Nice. Kevin, welcome. You're going to share your 1 to 5.
I'm a 4. Great weekend. Excited for the week. I'm going. This past week we officially wrapped up work on our backyard. It's now beautiful. Before the weekend, during the weekend, the kids destroyed it. But anyway, it's still nice. And yeah, generally pretty good.
Cool. I added a couple of agenda items for today. The first one was, this was pointed out to me by a team member of mine who I can't remember who had specifically brought it up, but I'd love to understand. I read this handbook link about the say-do ratio. I guess I'd just love to understand how that's being rolled out, how the product organization can help or assist the engineering organization or the development organization. Dan, you're typing away.
I am indeed. Yeah, so the say-do is pretty interesting. I feel like the say-do is a really good opportunity to get a better alignment between product and engineering. I'm a pretty big fan of this idea, just because MR rate doesn't speak to what customer value we're delivering at all. And so you can have an amazing MR rate and just do, like code climate stuff, which is good because our code is happier, but it doesn't like give value to our customers. So I don't see that as a great metric to determine what value we're delivering. So the say-do can, because it is inclusive of the collaboration between the engineering manager and the product manager to determine what we should commit to doing in each milestone. So there's that element of that from a product manager's perspective. They're part of that process. Right now, it's still work in progress. We haven't sort of finalized that dashboard, so we're working towards figuring out a way that we can actually use this to make sure it's reasonable. I had a KR in this quarter that we're in to get 100%, and just to see where people settle out in the different teams' release and package. The main point of discussion, what's interesting to me, is whether we determine, and there's different perspectives on this, which I think is quite interesting, whether we say that reprioritized items would be counted or not. And so we might get a week into the milestone and say, oh, someone's going to be out for a week for whatever reason. Maybe they take vacation, maybe we should have known earlier, but whatever. And we say, okay, we're not going to get that. It's going to get reprioritized. One of those metrics, one of those numbers will say you will be dinged for that as a negative, and one of them will be, it will just ignore it because it got reprioritized. Interesting discussion, but ultimately you can game this by committing to fewer things like overall. So you could just do like one thing. And I've joked about this because this will be the next iteration of what we do, I think, where we sort of say, well, you're only committing to 3 things in a milestone. And is that really enough? Does that meet our expectation for our teams? And then at that point, we might start thinking about how many items we're actually committing to, or what the value of those items are, because you might commit to one massive thing that's amazing and everyone loves it, right? And so it's a little bit like dependent on the work we're doing. And so I tried to give a kind of a lame explanation of what that looked like, which was, maybe we commit to 10 things, one thing gets removed just because we realized that another item was going to be more complicated than we thought it was. That gets removed. In one case, you would get, your say would be 10, and your do would be whatever you completed. And the other case, your say would be 9, and then whatever you completed. So that's kind of the distinction there. I think from as far as support from product managers, my hope here for this metric for engineering is to actually push the engineering managers where they aren't already, because I think a lot of engineering managers are, to make sure that their product manager's happy, because they'll start getting measured on this, right? And so if your product manager's saying, I want to commit to 800 things, and then the engineering manager's going, okay, just bring deliverable on it, and then we're only delivering 4, then our say-do looks terrible. And so how are we going to work through that, right? And that's something I think is really valuable. Sam?
Just repeating a comment, I'll give Darva credit for this because she said it in a meeting and I thought it was pretty insightful, but that also you could look at this metric as kind of a, indicator of engineering morale. For example, if you're always committing as a team to 5 times what you deliver, that kind of, okay, 1 month, but that kind of sucks after a while. Whereas if you're hitting, 70 to 100% of what you're committing to, that feels a lot more like you're getting done what you said you were going to get done. So I've started thinking of it also as more about kind of how you manage that, and how do you manage expectations within the team and set goals that are realistic but ambitious. And that if you see a ratio that's, say, way out of whack, 10% or something, then it might indicate that maybe that team is not feeling great about what they're delivering, and that's something to look into. So kind of in addition to what Daniel's talking about, I think we can look at it that way as well.
Cool, thank you. I will say, I'll start with responding to Sam, your point. I agree, and I think we've encountered through the course of my time here a couple of instances where teams have kind of consistently rolled a significant portion of their work to the next release, and that is dissatisfying for everyone involved. And so I think this metric helps highlight where those places are and encourages some sort of improved collaboration to deal with them. And then Dan, you're like a huge proponent of this, but I want to make sure that as we roll this out, all of our teams focus on that being a collaborative discussion, not a combative discussion. We probably all worked in organizations where it was like, product says I want to do 800 things, and then engineering has to tell them no, and then product complains about how engineering always tells them no. Let's just make sure that as our team, if there is that kind of discussion, that we're encouraging this, like we're all working together for this metric. I make sure to emphasize with our product team members in their CDF reviews, one of the competencies is what we call build track, and the result of that is better product inputs to enable engineering outputs and engineering performance. And so if say-do ratio is a new metric for that, that means we've got to make sure we're contributing to an effort to collaboratively improve that metric. So
yeah, just to add, thanks for that, Kenny. Sorry, I didn't mean to carry on without acknowledging. Thank you. The one thing I did add was something to keep in mind here is the way it's been calculated right now, and it is work in progress, is that it's calculated on the 18th, I think. And so items that you won't necessarily see missed deliverable on things that did not get counted as a do in the say do metric calculation. So this relates to the release that ends up going out for self-managed and omnibus. So that timing is why that's there. So this is something to keep in mind. It's really, I personally think it's kind of problematic. I prefer to just use, because we already have a bot that calculates missed deliverable, because it's the 22nd, I think it runs maybe a little early. It depends on a couple of factors. It's documented. But what that means is something could be done, delivered, no missed deliverable label, but didn't get counted in the say do and didn't go out on a release. And so our self-managed customers did not get this. So from a product perspective, it's important to remember that if we have items that we're particularly targeting for self-managed customers, and I'm not sure you make this distinction, and I'm not saying we should, I don't think this is ideal, but we should be really careful to keep an eye on that, because if it doesn't make it for the 17th, and that number changes depending on when the release is cut and a bunch of random factors that we're trying to get sort of nailed down, you can end up with a misrepresentation based on what labeling is on the issue, because it will say no missed deliverable because it got done on the 21st and it went out and .com got it, but no one self-managed got it. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. One other point on this, and I don't bring this up as like, hey, here's a problem that we might have. The product organization is also kind of actively pursuing pilot groups that are willing to start using iterations, and I'm not sure how iterations will intersect with this, if there's kind of a bi-weekly commitment versus a monthly commitment. So I'll give you the issue link here. I think I've pinged it in the, that didn't work. 1 second. I pinged it in our section channel asking if there were groups that were interested, but that issue kind of outlines this desire to start using the iterations feature and have kind of this bi-weekly sprint or weekly sprint model that might change how the teams that are participating in that pilot's say-do ratio will get calculated.
Yeah, I mean, that'll definitely affect it. This is, like one of the arguments that I've heard in favor of using the reprioritized number. So the things we took out, take them as, that's our say is now less because we took something out. The argument I heard was, that I thought was really good, was saying, well, we should be adapting to circumstances, and no one has a crystal ball here. So if something changes and we don't do it at the last second and just pull it out of a milestone so we don't get dinged for it, right? Then that should be a positive thing. We should be reactive and delivering what's valuable. And so if we went to shorter iterations, and I know a few teams have tried this, then that could lead to a situation where it's like, okay, we're going to commit to these things. We don't know what we're committing to in the second week. And so how are we going to have a say-do that makes any sense? And so that's something that's certainly something to consider. I think I would like to see us use shorter iterations because I think it's an easier to bite off little chunks of things, and it's more easy to be reactive. That's the whole point of doing the word I can't think of because it's Monday. Anyway, so I can't, but basically that's the whole point of doing the type of planning that we do. And it's not waterfall, it's the other one that's
Agile.
Thank you. I'm
So that's better than waterfall.
my mom says I'm pretty. Anyway, so like that to me is like a really useful thing to do, because then we're not looking at these things, because having an issue that goes for a whole month just seems a bit ridiculous if you think about it. Like someone working on one thing for a month is like, hold on, what happens if something changes? So yeah, but yeah, I think it's a really interesting idea. I'll see if I'll ping my team and make sure they've seen it.
Well, maybe I guess in the context of this discussion, it's just team members who are participating in that pilot might say, well, this is going to screw my say-do ratio up, and we should be comfortable saying, yes, that's okay. We understand it. We'll probably muck with the say-do ratio, but the pursuit of iteration and agility is more valuable than us measuring this say-do ratio consistently across groups. Groups that I've heard were interested were CI, Jason, I think, and Monitor Health. So keep those in mind. Okay, if nothing else on that topic,
Kenny,
Yeah.
did you have any thoughts about how that would interact with kickoff? That was the one thing that I was wondering more than anything else.
how iterations would interact with kickoff?
If you only plan your first week and then you just kick off your first week and call it good.
Well, there's one group that does this today. It's Geo. They like kick off and present the what do you call it, like the agile plan for their 2 iterations, but then they know that they have all sorts of flexibility to adjust in that second, or they do 2-week iterations. So they say, I've got my prioritized list. Generally speaking, in 2 iterations I get through here, I'm going to kick off on any items in that, but that is for public consumption. We do an iteration review in the middle there, where we're stopping and adjusting the priority and picking up new work.
Okay, cool.
That is how I know it to work in one model, but we'll see how it works in others.
They one interesting thing, they used to do it where they only did the first iteration. They would just present whatever they happened to be doing. So they must have learned from that and decided to do it the other way. So that's an interesting bit of info.
Yeah, Fabian had told me that exact thing happened, that they had gained enough predictability that they could say, we think these things will fit in the next iteration too.
Cool.
Okay, my other topic was, we did this, I'll share with you, Sam, directly. Like we have the adjustments we made in Monitor have meant we have now new ratios between front end and back end. And I think particularly there's some concern that our back end front end ratio in APM is not the way we would want it. And I don't know a great way for us to measure that or discuss. And it might be that in one group there's a balance where there's too much front end, and in another group there's a balance where there's not enough front end, and we could make some global optimizations. But I wanted to get your thoughts on how do we sense that in order to make sure we're optimizing those ratios across groups. And that's not just for you, Sam, that's across the whole section.
So there is a concept I've heard brought up of like gearing ratios, which is, I'm just gonna try to type it and then I'll say it. Which I don't think, I'm not sure we have one for this, but you know, Eric in his meeting was bringing up this idea of like, how many UX people do we need per engineer? How many support people do we need per, you know, whatever. And so thinking about those can be one tool, you know, for how we approach this. You know, in this specific case, I guess I'd ask like what is the problem that we're solving? You know, like if we think that that ratio is not optimized, then like how is that manifesting? Like what is the problem that we're actually seeing there? And I'm not aware of anything like specific related to front end and back end, but if you have details or Dove does that.
Yeah, I do. And in the specific case, I think it's, you can think of it this way, like if Dove has his master desired priority list that's going to deliver customer value, and we are able to do 1, 2, and 3, they require backend, but we can't do 4 because it requires backend and we don't have the bandwidth for it, but we can do 5 and 6 because they don't require backend. That would be an example where we're not able to prioritize the way we'd want because the ratio is off from what we're generally prioritizing. I think that's how it manifests. The gearing ratios we do have for front end and back end, and they were used to create the teams initially, and that was like, so you could stamp out cookie cutter teams. But then what I'm asking is, how do we then adapt to what is actually the work that is required and make sure we're optimizing across multiple groups? And we'd always said, yes, these are the gearing ratios for the standards, but we'll adjust and adapt throughout time. And I don't, aside from the realignment that we recently did, I don't have a great way for us to discuss, like, is this generally balanced across all groups? I could pull the PMs, but I didn't know if you all had some other way of thinking about that.
I think maybe retros or something. I mean, that would feel like, sorry to jump in front of you, Dan. But you know, like if on each milestone retro, if we saw a pattern, say of, you know, a month to 3 months where APM is saying, hey, we delivered this, but we weren't able to deliver this, and it really boils down to a ratio in the team. You know, I think that kind of feedback would be very valuable. I'm not sure if there's a more data-driven way to do it at this point. It seems like it would need to be kind of couched in, you know, this is the outcome of a milestone and our analysis of why, you know, it could have been better.
Do you think we would spot the converse too? Like we have too many, we have not enough front ends in one group or something like that?
I think we could, yeah. I mean, I think any kind of ratio like that, you know, if you have a product manager or a team who's saying, yeah, we have this strategy and we're trying to deliver on it, but we keep getting hit, you know, we had somebody who felt really idle for a lot of the milestone because they weren't, you know, they were blocked by somebody else, or we had this priority that we couldn't prioritize for this reason. I think you could spot all kinds of, you know, kind of misallocations there.
Cool. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, this happened in package, and I think this is maybe what you partially have in mind with the reallocation of CI and fulfillment. When we had someone leave, but I was already talking about the idea of we had too many front end people in package. There just wasn't enough work for those people. And I think if you had maybe a different team structure, someone was junior, although we don't do junior people generally speaking, but if you did, it might not have been as evident. But basically, I think you could potentially measure it by saying items that were added to the milestone after it was planned, or removed from the milestone after it was planned for separate functional capabilities. So we had a whole heap of front end things appear in the milestone for our team, and this wouldn't be necessarily labeled because they might be working on like a pajamas effort that isn't within that particular team's labeling, their group label. If those things are added to the milestone and completed on behalf of, and it would just be like an analysis of the author ID basically in the metrics, you could sort of see if they're doing certain things, the milestone's complete, yay, we did everything we needed to, but then they're doing a bunch of extra work, or the inverse could be true. Another way you could look at it is by looking at things that are blocked based on a functional need for another person within the team. So if in monitor health, they have a person removed, or I forget how many front-end people went out of the team, but if we're finding that blocked front-end label issues start appearing at a higher rate, you could sort of say, okay, well, the work we need to do is not being supported at this point. And so that's the other way I think you might be able to look at it. depends on the hygiene of our labeling, which is somewhat problematic. Depends on the team, depends on how often we're updating it. But I think there are ways you could measure this in a sort of a more objective way. From a subjective perspective, I knew ages before it came up that we had too many overqualified front-end engineers in the package group. So we knew, Tim and I both knew that there was just, we would plan a milestone, into the future as, a bit fuzzily, and then they'd be completing that work while we're still in the current milestone because there's just not enough to do. So there's that sort of more subjective thing, but that might be included in the first suggestion that I had there as well.
Cool.
Right.
I'll start an issue. I think I might do kind of all three. If we can get some data view from the development metrics, I can ping the PMs and just say, give me a sense of your back-end to front-end ratio, and if you feel like it is optimal. What I'm really interested in is if there's an easy solution that's win-win where one team needs an additional front-end and the other team needs an additional back-end, we should be willing to consider those kinds of opportunities quickly. The thing that I'm not super clear on, and this is my own deficiency, I've not participated heavily in the retros and reviewed them on like a group by group basis. So Sam, do you mind if I pick your brain a little bit on how you think we could best facilitate that discussion in retros and then ensure that it's getting bubbled up to leaders?
Yeah, I mean, so there's the development retro, which you're probably somewhat familiar with. You might not attend that, but monthly there's a development retro that kind of bubbles up all of the development department into a big doc and discussion. Christopher historically runs that, although the last two have been run by other people. Dan, do you know when that happens in the cycle? It's like towards the beginning of the month?
I'm familiar with it. I guess what I've never like gone and read through every group's issue and tried to spot a trend like you're suggesting I might be able to spot. And so I might just, if you're doing something similar, it might be good for me to just see how you walk through each one of your group's retros for kind of distilling any broad themes, because I've literally never done that exercise.
Yeah. We could spend some time on that. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thanks. All right, I think we're out of time. Hopefully this gets recorded and pushed to the right folder nowadays, but if it doesn't, I will let you know where I end up putting the recording.
Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.